Hello, I'm Scott Walker, Executive Director of CSARN, with Chapter 2 of our three-part annual conference. Maintaining Creativity 5 was presented over 3 Mondays in November of 2020. Here's Chapter 2. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you are, is going to unfold in just a couple of minutes. But first, I would like to introduce the chair of the board of CSARN. The technology gremlins prevented her from joining us last week, so unfortunately, she didn't get to hear all the wonderful things that I said about her. But you were here. You can attest to the fact that I said wonderful things about her. Let me tell you just a few of her many accomplishments. She is a former member of the Canadian Senate, and while being a senator, which is a pretty full-time job, she also got her law degree. She was the founding CEO of the Quasi-Judicial Tribunal for the Self-Employed in Canada's cultural industry, a former Deputy Secretary to Cabinet at the Privy Council Office, and a former Vice President of CBC Radio-Canada. She is not an artist herself, but she is married to a wonderful visual artist, Bernard Poulin. Please welcome the Honorable Marie Charette-Poulin.
Thank you, Scott, for those generous words. And yes, my name is Marie Poulin, and I have the honor, because it is an honor, to chair CSARN. So with my fellow board members, it's a joy to welcome all of you to Chapter 2 of our 5th annual conference, Maintaining Creativity. Messieurs, dames, bienvenue à la 5e conférence de CSARN. C'est une conférence annuelle que nous organisons, mais c'est notre première conférence par vidéo, par Zoom, grâce en fait à la pandémie. Alors j'aimerais accueillir tous les gens de partout au pays et à l'extérieur du pays. Yes, I missed Chapter 1, a technical glitch, completely my fault. Based on several reactions, including Scott's, I missed a great event. Thanks to Tom Jackson, thanks to our facilitators, my colleagues, the board members of CSARN, and thanks to the participation of you, the attendees. When I was invited to lead CSARN, I have to tell you, I fell in love. I fell in love with the people, the team at CSARN, but the membership of CSARN. And then I fell in love with the mandate. It's a unique mandate. This young, not-for-profit, we're a very young organization, we're less than 10 years old, is giving experienced and elder artists in Canada a voice, a real voice, une voix active. In so doing, CSARN is serving the country by making experience count in the cultural industry for all disciplines. We want to contribute to the excellence of the arts in Canada by matching professional artists with upcoming artists. Yes, mentoring by keeping our experienced artists relevant. But we also want to serve these senior artists by keeping them connected through our salons and informed through learning opportunities like today. So tell your family and friends to join CSARN. Tell younger artists to apply for our mentoring programs. Now, as you can see, maintaining creativity was the theme chosen for CSARN's annual conference 5 years ago. And it was a great choice because we all know that the success of every professional artist is the fruit of very hard work, as well as continual learning and discipline, etc., 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 but above all, creativity. Playwright George Bernard Shaw summed up creativity with a very well-known line, and I quote, "Some people see things as they are and say, why? I dream of things that never were and say, why not?" So back to you, Scott, to introduce our 4 outstanding panelists of today.
Thank you, Marie, for joining us, and thank you for that. So now, let us begin the discussion. Isolation, disruption, and the healing benefits of the arts. We're going to hear an opening statement from each of our four panelists. We are going to begin with a stand-up comic from Toronto, who is also an author. Her debut novel, Please Stand By, was released just about a year ago, just in time for COVID. And she has also been working on the front lines in a retirement home. Please welcome Carolyn Bennett.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Scott, for asking me to participate in this panel. You know, I'm a younger senior, I suppose. I'm in my 50s, and I'm very happy to be a part of this organization. My hair went gray in my 40s. I remember getting seniors discounts in my 40s with this hair. This hair has been a godsend to me. Yes, Toronto was in lockdown, but we do what we can. I had a novel that was published last year, and in January of 2020, I had the book launch at an Ethiopian restaurant where I co-produce a comedy show monthly. The book launch was amazing. I was looking forward to touring with the book and getting some buzz happening. And I started a literary night at this restaurant. And things were going so well. It was all very exciting. And then in March, as we know, everything shut down because of the pandemic. I did a few shows online, and what will probably be discussed today is that online is not the same. No, it's not the same, but it is a very important it's a very important add-on to being connected to others. Around May, we were still in lockdown in Toronto, and I was on CERB. That's the Canadian Emergency Recovery Benefit that people received if they lost their employment, self-employed people in particular. And my husband had lost his woodworking shop. Things were not the best. They were not too rosy. And I thought, if I don't get out of the house, one of us is in trouble. I have always enjoyed working with seniors. I think it's part of a feeling I have of doing, well, not only my civic duty, but of learning, of actually learning from people who went before and listening to their stories and enjoying their company. And when I started to see the news stories about what was happening in long-term care homes, it broke my heart. I think it shocked our nation. Both my parents are deceased, so I wasn't directly affected by it. But as a compassionate human being and as an artist and somebody collecting the CERB, I just could not sit by. There are a couple of seniors' homes not too far from where I live, so I thought I've got to contribute my ability, my talent, something to people who were suffering. So I started at full-time at a retirement home in June of this year, and I haven't looked back since. It has been absolutely wonderful. I'm amazed I got the job because I've never worked with the elderly or the older adult population before, other than volunteering with Meals on Wheels. And I was given a job right away, and I have really enjoyed it because the thing about the thing about our system, our long-term care system, I think, is that we focus so much on numbers, especially in the news, because it helps remove us from the reality of our aging population. So we can talk in terms of how many beds, how many homes, that sort of thing. But to actually go into a home and to sit down and to listen to the stories of not just artists, but people who from all walks of life, civil servants. There are a lot of civil servants who live at the home where I work at, nurses, the public servants, you name it. To listen to their stories has been so refreshing and such an honor for me. And as I told them when I started there. I said, I'm not here to condescend or to treat you like an infant. No, we're peers. I'm looking at you as people I will learn from as well. So I made sure that they felt that this was mutually, beneficial. So that way, not only were they receiving, but they were also giving, which I think is very important for people to feel connected and to feel like they're giving of themselves. What I've done recently is I've started to collect their stories. So I've been interviewing some of the seniors, and they're in their 80s and 90s, and they probably look at me like some daughter or somebody they don't want to bother with, but I let myself in and I say, no, I'd like to hear your story. And it's been wonderful, and it's connected them through these times because of the situation in Toronto, we can't gather like we used to. So now, not only am I collecting stories and interviewing them and writing them for the newsletter, I've also found that I'm a physiotherapist. I'm going from floor to floor and doing exercise with people. I'll conclude by saying, I think people should consider helping and communicating our art and our hearts and our point of view in other ways that can benefit people on the ground. This is an emergency we're in a pandemic. So I thought, I'm going to think differently. I'm going to put my ego aside. I'm not just an artist living in my office here. I'm also a member of society, and I want to contribute to that society. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn Bennett. We will return to that theme for sure. Our next guest hails from Portugal Cove, Newfoundland. She's an environmental poet and visual artist. Her work has been shown both nationally and internationally. She's the winner of the Governor General's Award for Lifetime Achievement from last year, and a member of the Royal Canadian Academy of the Arts. Please welcome Marlene Kreitz.
Hello. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm speaking to you from Uktahumguk, which is the Mi'kmaq name for the island of Newfoundland. The island is also the ancestral homeland of the Beothuk. The province also includes Labrador, which is the homeland of the Innu and the Inuit. Archaeologists have found that the provincial territory has been inhabited for over 8,000 years by a succession of peoples. We panelists were asked for a one-line thought on the topic, and this is what I submitted. How can we as artists, who are members of a species that is very disruptive to all life forms on the planet, make art in isolation that can help heal other beings during this dark time of climate catastrophe, pandemic, racial injustice, and looming fascism? Well, it's not so much a thought, of course, but a question, and I'm afraid I don't have any answers for you today, but I wanted to propose this question in order to broaden the discussion from a focus on us human beings to include other beings. In this dark time, we definitely have a role to play as artists because the arts can move people in a way that science cannot. My own art practice has become less and less oriented to art institutions and more concerned with gestures that address and cherish the land and all the beings in it. Because there are massive environmental changes taking place, we really have to look at our cultural practices. I don't think it's an option to say that because something is art, it warrants whatever consumption of materials and toxic pollution it takes to create it. In fact, for me, it's just the opposite. If art is going to play a role socially and culturally, which we hope it does, it needs to lead by example. Most artists are urban and work in cities. My art practice is based in a rural area and performed there, which is a change from the norm. And working with Indigenous elders in rural areas, as I did in the late 1980s, asking them to draw memory maps for me, introduced a different way of putting art into the world. For the past 18 years, the focus of my work has been the 6-acre patch of boreal forest where I live. My work has become more and more dematerialized, and I'm less dependent on exhibitions in galleries. I have never wanted to make monuments, and when I moved here, I made a conscious decision that I would not use the natural property for a sculpture garden. So the boreal forest surrounding me has become my studio, the source of my subject matter, and the platform for public multidisciplinary events. These events are walks, public walks that I guide people, groups of about 25, with readings of site-specific poetry. I call it the Boreal Poetry Garden. These events in the Boreal Poetry Garden evolved into multisensorial crossings between the arts and the sciences. Each walk had a theme, and I invited different experts to collaborate with me. These experts have included acoustic musicians, contemporary dancers, a fire juggler, and natural scientists such as a mycologist, a geologist, and a bird biologist, all helping to connect people to the boreal forest ecosystem. During the past 15 years, over 900 visitors have come to these events, but they were canceled this year. On the plus side, I've been able to spend more time by myself in the forest, which has contributed to a new series of work titled Between the Earth and the Firmament. This period of self-isolation allowed me to look even more closely at my environment. As I've often said, I'll never live long enough to take it all in. Perhaps the most important thing we can do to overcome isolation, to disrupt capitalist consumer culture, and to heal, is to be present in whatever form that can take, and to pay attention. Because the arts, all the arts, make us better observers of our own experience. So thank you for being present, and thank you for your attention.
Says the former broadcaster as he forgot to unmute his microphone. Our next panelist hails from Montreal. She is very familiar with how to use a microphone. She's a Juno Award-winning jazz vocalist. She's a winner of the Dora Maver Moore Award for Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, the author of the children's book, Nana, What Do You Say?, a member of the Order of Canada, and a winner of numerous awards for advancing Black art and culture. It is a great pleasure to welcome Renee Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm so honored to be a part of this wonderful, esteemed panel. And the subject matter is relevant to my life and my existence. I'd like to say that as an artist, I am not unfamiliar to times that are disruptive, because we make our way through our careers with uncertainty and benefits. But before going on to that, I'd like to also mention that I am a definite senior, about to make my way through my second, I guess it would be generation of a great grandchild. And I'm very active in the lives of my family, as well as my stage and my academic world. My academic world is filled with young vocalists, vocal musicians who are seeking to make their presence and their career in the art of music, and particularly in jazz. We are facing a disruptive period, of course, but it's part of the course. We learn to survive through this disruption. I made a few notes. One was the isolation, and the isolation equals ingenuity. We figure out how to do things and solve problems and become original and clever and inventive ways. And as humans, that is a process of who we are and where we're going and how we have arrived. And I try to instill that in my singers and the musicians that I'm working with, that prospect, as well as family members. We need each other. I don't think I feel that I have a credit to anything that I've done or that I do or that I perceive to do. I think that it's just the purpose of going forward. That was an example that was bestowed on me by a wonderful, wonderful person who I was gifted to call mother because she birthed me. And my cultural and ethnic heritage showed me through her how to be proactive in my own life, how to go forward, how to make things happen in the deepest and darkest moments that I think or thought wouldn't happen. And I think that whole survival tactic is the benefit of who we are as I say, humans and as artists. And we explore and extract that information from just our own creativity and our own existence. I see it daily in the students that I work with at McGill University and Laval University. And I still go in with my mask and plexiglass, and I have that energy of sharing our musical heritage together. I need that. I need that to go forward. I have witnessed, as I said, the uncertainty and the disruption in my life on varying levels, especially when I lost my husband and my right and left arm, musician Richard Ring. And I realized how much I was dependent on his being here, but he left me with the legacy of continuing. And in that legacy, I try to explore and exploit that through working with the young. It's important to work with and to be a part of that of seniors, of which I contribute that my own existence. But I know who I am, and I need to feel the importance of sharing that with the youth so that they will recognize how to use that in their world, whether it's for themselves or to go forward, to spread that information throughout their senior world of parents and grandparents and friends and associates. And these people are our audience after a while. And we still have to communicate and be aware of our existence in their lives and how they exist in our lives. Again, I credit all of that information to a very hardworking single parent, my mother, who never showed me any resistance to making things work, how to find the resilience in her life, how to find the ingenuity in her life. And I was given that opportunity to have a firsthand view of a struggle, yet a benefit. And I try to instill that again, as I say, in the people that I work with, the young vocal musicians, as well as my own 15 or more grandchildren, and soon to be 2 great grands, and just my world public of friends and associates and the people that I hope that I inspire. Sorry. I hope to inspire and am inspired by. I, again, am very, very aware of all of the panel's recent information, and it's so uplifting and valuable. And I look forward to continuing this panel with everyone today. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. And as a sometimes jazz vocalist and a big fan of yours, I'm thrilled to be sharing the screen with you today. Our fourth panelist wears two different hats, and so, well, at least two different hats, and she's coming to us with a different perspective on the discussion today. She hails from Winnipeg. She is an art historian, a gallery director, a professor, an arts cultural management consultant, and in all her spare time, she's also a member of the Canadian Senate, who brings her perspective of the arts to the Canadian Senate and to other parliamentarians. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Patricia Bovey.
Merci Scott, c'est vraiment un grand honneur d'être ici avec vous tous et vous toutes aujourd'hui. This is a real honor for me, and I would like to give my greatest congratulations to CSARN on this particular series. And I want to thank CSARN for the work they're doing with mentorships. Mentorships have long been important to me, and in fact, last week in the chamber, I suggested this might be a time that the federal government should take a look at developing pilot projects for mentorships. And of course, I was referring to the arts, but maybe not necessarily just the arts. I want to talk about your key words. Isolation. What does isolation bring? Well, as an art historian from Western Canada, I can tell you it's a geographic isolation that led to so many new ways of visual expression over so many decades that for me, isolation does give real cause for innovation and new creation. And I believe that COVID is no different. I'm really proud of the work that artists have done and that arts organizations have done for all of us during these past very difficult months. Let me turn to healing for a moment. The impact of the arts on health is something I've worked on now for, I hate to tell you this, at least 30 years. And the impact was so strong that in fact, it led me to start a public art gallery in St. Boniface Hospital in 2007. A curated gallery which I directed until I was appointed to the Senate. And the impact of the arts is huge, and we mustn't forget it. So with that, I want to really focus on the word disruption. Disruption certainly has its negative side, but it also has a very positive side. And there's an awful lot of Pollyanna in me, so I want us to turn to what is the positive side of this isolation, this pandemic that we're in, and the disruption. What can we do and what are we doing? And we've heard from Carolyn about her work in the retirement home, and Carolyn, I applaud you. Marlene, your creative practices have inspired me for a very long time, and I've always loved seeing your exhibitions. And Renee, your word proactive and the importance of heritage and the importance of history and the legacy of continuing, that is what we do in the arts. And I want to thank the Speaker of the Senate from Newfoundland for giving me a wall in the foyer outside the Senate chamber where this summer, just before the speech from the throne, I was able to install a wall, which I'm calling Honoring Canada's Black Artists. And I started with work from the West, and it will rotate. And there will be works, I can assure you, from other parts of the country. So what are we doing with this disruption and the arts? I think we have a huge amount of work to do to prove to everybody that the arts are really central to every aspect of Canadian society, from the economy to jobs, to health, to education, to the environment, to tourism, to crime prevention, and to rejuvenating rural communities. And I won't take time now, but I can cite statistics from one end of the country to the other, which proves to me, and I hope to you, that government cannot solve any of the issues on our plates unless we invoke, include, and rely on the arts. Last week, I spoke to a bill that I have before the Senate calling for a visual artist laureate on Parliament Hill. And it is my hope that using this international language, we will indeed convey to everybody, children, adults, seniors, youth, those for whom English or French is their natural language, to any Indigenous language, to any refugee, new Canadian. Let's take a look at what we do. Let's take a look at the issues that are consuming us. So it's my hope that the Visual Artist Laureate will become a reality. I do think it's important that we embrace cross-ministerial connections. And I'd like to thank all the arts organizations, the associations, the individual artists with whom I've been speaking daily these last 10 months, 12 months about the situation. And I want to thank Minister Guilbeault for listening to me and incorporating many of the ideas that have come from the creative sector. Looking ahead, I am going to put on the table a project that I want to put in the Senate early in the new year. I'm putting forward a Canadian Arts and Cultural Bill of Rights. I have drafted it. It's got 10 points. Obviously, it talks about accessibility for both creators and for audiences. Gets into some detail. And when we move into the discussion side of today's program, I'd be happy to answer questions. And I think with that, I'm going to say thank you. I'm happy to carry on the conversation. And I'm also happy to send any of you any of the pronouncements I may make in the Senate at any given point. So Scott, I'm going to turn it back to you and happy to carry the conversation on.
Thank you very much, Senator Bovey. And we will, I think everybody's going to be interested in the Canadian Arts and Cultural Bill of Rights. So we will be talking about that and many other things that our four panelists have raised. I invite all four of you to put your screens and your microphones back on so we can start discussing everything that we've heard over the last few moments. I invite members of our audience, our participants, to also ask any questions. You'll find a Q&A box button at the bottom of your screen or the top of your screen, I think if you're on a tablet, and you can just enter a question there and we will pose it to our panel. So, oh, and by the way, I just checked, we have about 140 people from across the continent practically joining us today. So thank you all again for being here. Wanted to talk about the word disruption. It's the word that has come up most often. Anybody who has visited the CSARN website will know that we use the word disruption as part of our messaging. We consider ourselves to be disruptives. Artists always have been disruptive, and especially when we were all starting our careers 40, 50, sometimes 60 years ago, that's when there's incredible cultural revolution was going on, and we were at the forefront. We were the ones who were disrupting artistic norms and cultural norms in the 50s and the 60s and going forward. So disruptive is not a new term for us, but for the world we're living in now, yes, it is a new way of looking at things. And I would just ask our four panelists very quickly to talk about, if you would, how the word disruptive works into your art or artistic practice, or has it ever been part of your artistic practice? I'm going to start with Renee Lee because she's right below me on my screen. Renee?
Yes, that word disruptive is, it circumvents throughout the artist's life, mine in particular, because just from the immediate example of when COVID hit, I had the busiest summer of my career, and it just stopped, it desisted, it just didn't, and it felt like it would never return, because I'm going up the levels of my career, and these engagements are important. These the association with my art and my craft are important, and the disruptiveness of it gave me a certain feeling that of vulnerability. I've never really felt that before, because as I stated in my initiation of what we were saying, that I've always had that sort of push forward. I'll find a way to make it happen. But it's a real emotional turn of events at this point in my life, and I'm sure with everyone that is feeling this this way of disruption. And yeah, it's just trying to deal with it and turn it into something that will become more positive, and find other ways of going through my ordeal of disruption.
Thank you, Renee. Carolyn.
The comedy community has taken a hit, certainly,
Yes.
because of COVID. All the clubs are closed. I haven't done any stand-up since March, although my husband might have something else to say about that. But it's been very hard on the comedy community. And by the way, the Stand-Up Comedy Association of Canada, we are trying, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I know that they are trying to be considered full-fledged artists and have access to funding from the government. That's another issue. But as far as writing, I have barely noticed that I have been isolated, so to speak. As a writer, I find a lot of solace in being alone, being in my office, and retreating into my imagination and listening to the characters and the stories that they're telling me. So I'm very fortunate to be a writer and to have that ability to go inward and express story and plot and character through the written word. I'm very fortunate that way. The one aspect is the disruption to the community, to the performing arts. That is really difficult to see, to be a part of. I've done a couple of shows online. For the 30 people who saw them, it was fun, but making a living at it is going to require some further creativity. I know a lot of theater companies are doing Zoom plays, and everything has moved online. The International Festival of Authors was online this year. It's great for lazy people. I don't have to leave the couch. I can just sit and have access to all these wonderful interviews and these great readings. That's fantastic. But what does it do for sales? What does it do for livelihoods? That is where the disruption is very noticeable. And like I said, collecting CERB is a godsend, and thank you for our government for looking after us. But personally, I felt like I had to do more, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. And I'm fortunate because it's not full time. It's just enough hours that I feel like I'm taking a break from the home office and getting out. But I'm also able to come home and to have like 3 days a week or 4 days a week to write. So the disruption has been emotional as far as the community and seeing how people are suffering. But artistically, as far as my artistic practice in writing, really haven't noticed much of a difference. Thanks.
Thank you, Carolyn. And that brings up an interesting point, and you kind of span both sides of the point, which is the isolation. Well, not only the isolation point, but the audience participation point. As a stand-up comic, you kind of feed off the response of the audience. I mean, it's part and parcel of what you are as a stand-up comic. The same can apply to musicians, as you would know, Renee. You know, feeding off that audience as you're hitting the high note or belting out a particular lick. And for an actor, which is something that I have done often in my life, it's exactly the same thing. But it's a different thing for visual artists and writers because you work in isolation anyway, which is not to diminish the effect of what we're going through right now on artists of any kind. Speaking of which, let's get Marlene's perspective, and then we will continue. Marlene?
Oh, thanks. Well, as of March, absolutely everything I had in my schedule this year was canceled. I was supposed to run an artist residency in Nova Scotia. I had exhibitions. I was going to do a lot of workshops with students at the art college in Corner Brook. Everything was canceled. In fact, the fee I'm getting for being on this panel today is one of the few bits of professional money I've actually made this whole year. But I'm the kind of person who likes to work behind the scenes. And I initiated an arts association here in Portugal Cove, St. Philip's, and we had our launch on Friday night. And it was a massive success because people have not had things to go out to. We actually had musicians perform, and we had a lot of craftspeople and artists setting up their work. There's a garden center here in Portugal Cove, and they have this huge greenhouse, and all the plants had been moved out, and they turned the heaters on. And so we had this beautiful big space in which artists were setting up their work, doing demonstrations of what they do. And the whole feeling was just, you could tell people had been bursting for months to be able to get together and you know, do their thing. And so I'm still sort of in the glow from that happening on Friday night. And there's been zillions of emails of people saying how wonderful it was and everything. So I'm feeling quite proud about that.
You're so fortunate to have experienced that. I envy you. Patricia, you bring a dual perspective to the conversation, and we've had a lot of questions about the Bill of Rights that you mentioned, so we want to get into that in a moment. But first, I just thought if you had anything to add to the concept of disruption from an artistic standpoint, we'd love to hear it.
I do.
Yeah, I'll bet you do.
I want to say, Carolyn, one of my privileges through the pandemic was meeting with a number of comedy artists and working with them, I hope, so that, yes, as an art form, they can be disruptive and get grants. So that's very much on my radar screen. And I'm very concerned about the number of visual artists who have lost shows, emerging artists, mid-career artists who have lost European opportunities, not to mention senior artists who have lost major retrospectives. So that's been huge. And I'm also concerned about, I'm very grateful for the way artists through the pandemic and through the murders in Nova Scotia and through the Black Lives Matter protest have been giving and giving and giving. I'm truly distressed by how many have been giving and getting no remuneration back. And in the chamber the other day, I suggested that the internet platforms that artists are going on as freebies, the internet platforms should be considered broadcast media and become part of the status of the artist. So I think we have disruptive work to do, folks. And I see part of my role, I have the greatest respect for my colleagues and Marie Poulin, who my predecessor, but I want to disrupt the thought processes in the Senate that we do this way and this way and this way. And don't we have nice, neat little silos? For years, I've been trying to poke holes in those silos until we get a cross-pollination of ideas. So we're not going to get anywhere. So I am trying to disrupt within the chamber so that people are going to think about the creative arts and all the disciplines, whether it's the performers, the behind the scenes folks without whom we couldn't perform and present, or our audiences, we need to embrace them all in every sector of society. So there I'm carrying on, Scott. You talked about us all being disruptive 50 years ago, and this old girl hasn't stopped.
But if I may quote from what we all used to say, right on. But I didn't finish when I talked about CSARN using the term disruptive. I didn't finish the thought, because the line that we use is disruptive yesterday and today. So we are all continuing to be disruptive. It is just what we are. It is who we are.
And tomorrow.
And tomorrow. Yes. Yes. Well, that part was implied, but you know. Yes, good point. Yes, again, we do want to hear about the Bill of Rights, but I have another question around to get to, and that's the last part of the discussion. We've been talking about isolation. We've been talking about disruption. Let's talk about the healing benefits of the arts. How as artists can we heal ourselves, our colleagues, our nation, and the world? Well, not necessarily the world. That's a tall order. As Tom Jackson said last week, you don't have to change the whole world. You just have to change yours. The rest will follow. So let's talk about the healing benefits of the arts and how we can use our art to just help heal everything, everybody. And Patricia, can I start with you?
You certainly can. And it's really, as I said, because of that I started the Buehler Gallery at St. Boniface Hospital. Let me throw some stats out. International studies over a number of decades have shown that people who attend live arts events, regardless of discipline, tend to live 2 years longer, cost the health system less, miss less work, get out of hospital a day or two earlier after elective surgery. We know what the creative world does for mental health. And when I started this little art gallery in the hospital, and I thank the powers that be at the hospital for letting us do it, and I applaud the major Canadian artists who have allowed me to show their work. When I started it, various health ministers would come up and say, "Oh, Pat, what are you doing these days? What are you doing these days?" And I said, "I'm helping you with hallway medicine." We know how important it is. We know how that connection between the artist, again, regardless of discipline, being in that concert hall, Renee, and hearing you, connecting with you, or Marlene being in your exhibition. And I think the last exhibition I saw of yours was at the opening of the new Beaverbrook Gallery in Fredericton a couple of years ago. Being in that space with your work, it makes you feel whole again. And need I say what laughter does and what the honesty of comedy does. So you all have the tools, and CSARN has the tools. What we collectively have to do is encourage the rest of society to use those tools that are all around them.
Thank you, Pat. That's great. Marlene.
Oh dear. I don't think I can top that.
She's a tough act to follow.
No.
I mean, definitely I would say being an artist is very healing for me. And I can only hope that what I do does actually have some effect on other people, but you never really know, really. I mean, people sign the guest book at the exhibition, everybody says wonderful and all that kind of thing, but you don't really know. It usually comes back to me in quite a roundabout way. And I do believe there are ripple effects from what we do as artists that we can never follow. We will never know. I just totally believe that it's happening. The ripple effects are happening, and art is healing. It is. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. And just to add on to something, one of the stats that you quoted, Pat, about the healing benefit of the arts in hospitals, we've all heard of or read studies that show that children who participate in the arts do better in school.
Yep.
That's a given these days. Carolyn, I know you've attended at least one of our live Maintaining Creativities. I'm not sure whether you were with us last year, but we had a gentleman by the name of Luis Fornazzari, who is a doctor at St. Michael's Hospital. They have a memory clinic at St. Michael's Hospital, and he was telling us about a study that they're doing at St. Mike's on how musicians or exposure to music, even as a passive audience member, but even more so as an active participant, sitting down and playing the piano or singing or playing an instrument, really can prevent memory loss. And it's really, and they just happened to be studying music at the time, but he said their supposition is that it applies to all of the arts. So what we are doing is really helping us and helping our audience and our colleagues to stave off memory loss. It's not guaranteed, but it's a big help. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And Carolyn, you were patiently waiting, and you turned on your microphone when I didn't really have a question for you.
I was mesmerized.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
But now I want to know about the healing benefits of the arts from your perspective. And you're an active participant in that right now with your work in the retirement home.
Well, I've never used PowerPoint in my career. I've never had a need to. I use screenwriting software, but I had to do a lot of presentations when we were able to gather. The first thing I wanted to do was do a comedy series. And the seniors, the residents, they were in lockdown for about 3 months. This was before I got there. They could not leave their rooms. And many of them said it felt like prison.
Yeah.
So the first thing I wanted to do was introduce some comedy, do a history of comedy, start with Chaplin, work our way up to Jerry Lewis, to eventually I want to get to George Carlin and then Richard Pryor. I don't know, I might be pushing the envelope there. But to hear them laughing uproariously, and then afterwards, them coming up to me and saying, we haven't laughed like that in months. They couldn't remember the last time they could laugh like that. That was so rewarding. And I think a lot of the performing arts as well is also being receptive,
yeah.
Encouraging their stories and being receptive to them at the same time, and encouraging them to trust me, for one thing, that they're safe with me, that they can say whatever they want to me. It's amazing. Sometimes the job sometimes I feel like a psychologist on some days. It really is. I think the reason they hired me because I'm more mature and I'm well-rounded and I don't have a recreation background. I just come from a place of sincerity and experience in the arts and a certain amount of wisdom and life experience, and it's been wonderful, and it's definitely healing. I know they want me to do some stand-up around Christmas time, and I think I will consider it. And I've been very lucky to get a grant from the City of Toronto to work on a collection of short stories. So that's healing me and actually helping me work out some anxiety I have around the pandemic as well. So we just need to be open to each other. Yeah.
Good thoughts. Thank you, Carolyn. And Renee.
Laughter and music is a stimuli. It does stimulate the necessary juices that create all types of emotions. But I think in the immediate genre of life today, it is purposeful to have laughter and music because we all in some way are connected energetically or by the energy of that pronouncement, to be able to share, to create that memory or to bring it back thoughts of that music seems to stimulate, or the laughter to generate that emotion of, to take away the fear and to just to stimulate. And I really can't expand on more than what Patricia or Carol and Marlena said, because it's all relevant and it does work. And we need that energy. We connect. I believe that we're connected spiritually by the energy source that keep us in line with our humanity.
Great. Thank you, Renee. We've got quite a few questions, and we're going to have to wrap up shortly because we want to get to the breakout sessions. But a couple of the recurring questions that are coming up both have to do with something that you brought up, Pat, and I'm sure the other panelists will want to weigh in on that as well, and that is your Bill of Rights. Could you tell us more about that?
Well, I will.
Thank you.
It's short. It's just 10 points. And really, it's for me, providing a base for cultural recognition in Canada's social development, innovation, and international policies. I was really proud that the Senate agreed to do, at my behest, a special study on cultural diplomacy in the center stage of Canada's foreign policy. We have to bring the arts back to the center. And so one of the points I have in here is that arts, culture, and heritage should be recognized as essential to the social and economic well-being of Canada. I mean, we've all been saying that this morning, right? That all Canadians of all cultural backgrounds and diversities and ages have a right to know and engage in artistic events and our heritage. Everybody has a right to learn how to sing, to paint, to create, to write, right? It's not just for the few who teachers say, you know, you might be good at it. It's for everybody. We're talking about languages, right? Everybody, and it doesn't matter that I may not become the greatest cellist in the world. I mean, if I can play 4 notes, it'd be great. But maybe it'll teach me how to listen better, right? That this participatory. I also believe that artists of all disciplines have a right to have a presence of their art in public life. It shouldn't just be, as the comedians are telling me, we don't get artist grants. How do we qualify? Well, I think there is a right to qualify for whatever artistic expression you want to work with. I also think that I've got in here that Canadian artists have a right to be represented worldwide, and that worldwide artists have a right to meet the audiences in Canada. It's a two-way street. And then there's the issue, and this isn't none of these are more or less important to it than another, artists with disabilities. And I think I've been doing a lot of work with the disabled community and artists who happen to be deaf, and how do we make sure that they can engage and that the freedom of speech be associated and accorded to citizens, all citizens, including artists, so that their work isn't ruled out of bounds. What are people really saying? So I've been doing, as I've been talking these last months with associations and organizations, I've been raising this. I'd love to have conversations with small groups of CSARN or groups around CSARN or whatever. I had hoped to put this bill on the floor of the chamber this fall, but with everything that's going on, it seemed inappropriate. So I'm looking to do it in February or March, and we're going to be setting up some focus groups for me to have virtually in January. So I'm gathering ideas. I don't want to make this bill complex. I want it simple, but I want the surrounding language I have that I present in the chamber to make sure it's inclusive and embracing and not just talking about a few.
This sounds very exciting. How can we help?
You can help by getting me ideas. I am going to say, as Senatrice Poulin knows, that I do have a mailing list in my office, and whatever speeches I might give on whatever all, we send out to that list. I'd be happy to add anybody to that who would like to get information. And then I get into dialogue with people. I mean, this is about humanity, as Renee said, right? It's about sharing. And being the first museologist and art historian in the Senate, I feel in the history of Canada, I feel I have a great responsibility to open as many Pandora's boxes as possible.
The chat room is lighting up with yay right on. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I just want to get a final thought on anything that's been discussed, or anything else for that matter, from our 4 panel members. And I thank you so much for contributing today and making this such a wonderful conversation. Anybody want to go first, rather than me just singling you out?
Let me just underline the really, really important principle of CSARN with mentorships. Our senior and experienced artists have a wealth of experience to share with emerging and mid-career artists and arts administrators who particularly now need that shoulder. So please, it's so important. And I thank you and applaud you.
Thank you, and thank you for your support, both here and in the Senate on that. We continue to work on our mentoring program, and anybody who wants to apply, you can do it through our website, csarn.ca. And if you have younger colleagues who you feel need mentoring, either by you or somebody else, have them apply, or apply together. We love that, a package deal. It's great. It makes it very simple on our end. Renee, any final thoughts? Here I am saying I'm not going to call on you, and then I called on you.
I'm grateful to learn so much just from, or to support my own thoughts and where to go with this information and these issues. And I'm thrilled, Patricia, about the Bill of Rights, because I think that's a door kick open for the arts, and that also means for everyone. I mean, we're all artists in some respect, and even the listeners, and then we need listeners, or the people who of appreciation will benefit from what we're going to be able to benefit by. And it just broadens the spectrum and creates that much more wealth in our community.
Thank you, Renee. And Pat, I'm just going to ask you one more question. People are asking in the chat room, how do they get more information, or get on a mailing list, or find out more about the Bill of Rights?
The easiest thing to do is to email me at my Senate office. Scott, I think you have the email address if you want to post it, but it is patricia.bovey@sen, S-E-N, .parl, P-A-R-L, .gc.ca.
Just making sure. Yep. Okay.
And the other thing, you can go to my website and it's all there. And honestly, I'm here serving Canadians. And yes, I'm a Manitoba senator, but being from the arts, I feel I'm representing my constituency is the creative community from coast to coast to coast.
Bless you. Thank you very much. Marlene, final thoughts? You're muted.
I just want to thank everybody. This has just been fabulous for me to hear what everyone's doing, and what Patricia's. I hope this works, Patricia. I think this is going to be fantastic. God love you.
We'll try. We'll try.
Thank you, Marlene. And Carolyn.
I just want to say it's been such a pleasure to be on such a wonderful panel with you, terrific creators. And remember, each day, sweat a little, laugh a lot.
Well put. That kind of sums up what Tom Jackson was saying last week as well. So it's nice to have that recurring theme. Carolyn, thank you very much. Carolyn Bennett, Marlene Kreitz, Patricia Bovey, and Renee Lee, thank you so much for this conversation. Take care.
Thank you.
Chapter 2 of CSARN's Maintaining Creativity 5. I hope you'll stay with us or come back later for Chapter 3. I'm Scott Walker. Thank you for watching.